Let's get comfortable with the uncomfortable. Today on the Prenup podcast with matchmaker and therapist, Madeleine Phelan. Welcome to another episode of the Prenup podcast. Today we have Madeleine Phelan with us. She is a therapist and a matchmaker. Welcome to the pod.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
So tell me a little bit more about yourself. What type of therapy do you practice? How are you matchmaking? How does it kind of all tie in together?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started as a therapist about 4 years ago. Previously was in consulting and kind of realized most problems are people problems. And instead of solving problems for companies to help them make more money, I want to solve problems for individuals to help them live better lives. So I got into therapy thinking I would focus on all sorts of issues, but found that most of the clients that were reaching out to me were actually men. And most of what they would talk about was their dating life and their relationships. Most of them work in finance, so it's a lot of work stress too. But I obviously was more interested in the dating and relationship side of things. So that just kind of naturally became a niche. And then this matchmaking opportunity presented itself through a connection. It kind of fell into my lap and it felt like something really aligned and really fun. So I've been doing that for a couple of months now too. And it's an interesting way to combine the two. It's like consulting plus therapy equals matchmaking in a way. And with our matchmaking clients, we're understanding their needs, figuring out their problems, but also actually trying to solve for it versus with therapy, maybe it's guidance or understanding your own patterns, but I can't go out there and source someone for them to date, right? So it's cool. The other really interesting thing with matchmaking now is I get both sides of the story.
Yeah.
So if you set two people up on a date, then we meet and get feedback from both of them versus in therapy, I don't know if what they're telling me is true, right? Like,
Totally.
and I think there's some statistic like 70% of people lie to their therapists.
Really?
And I like to think I can tell when they're lying, but
wait, that's wild.
I've even had clients come back to me a week later and be like, so I have to tell you something. Like, I left this part of the story out. I didn't want you to be disappointed in me. And of course, I'm like, what do you mean? Like, unconditional positive regard. Like, I'm never going to judge you or be disappointed in you. But yeah, sometimes it's like the shame of admitting it even out loud.
Yeah.
Versus with matchmaking, I'm getting feedback from both parties. So one person might say, it was great. And the other person is like, well, his clothes were wrinkled and he didn't open the door for me.
It's so interesting to see two people's perspectives. Like, I'm trying to remember, there's that old French film where it's someone on a date, and like the top part of the film is the girl's impression of the date and the bottom part is the man's impression of the date. And it's the exact same date, but like told from both their stories. And it ends up being two completely different films just in the same location.
Totally. Yeah. It's so interesting. And right, I think that's a great metaphor for life, right?
Yeah.
We're all living through our own glasses.
So, okay, tell me a little bit more about childhood, growing up. Like, where did you grow up? What was your parents' dynamic like? Give me all that.
Yeah, so I grew up like 45 minutes outside the city in a small town, Chatham, New Jersey. I know you ended up at Oak Knoll, so not too far away. But yeah, I was in this very small town where everyone knew everything about each other, 7,000 people total. And there was a lot of keeping up with the Joneses, keeping up with appearances. But behind closed doors, people's situations were very different. So my parents met in college. My mom was a freshman. My dad was a senior. It was like 2 months before graduation. And she was like, yeah, okay, like that was fun. I'll probably never see that guy again. Ended up dating for 8 years. They were married for 23. When I was, I think 3 or 4, he was diagnosed with a rare autoimmune disorder. And that got progressively worse over time. And because of that, it was a strain on the family and on the relationship more over time too. So when I was in middle school, he had both of his hips replaced. In high school, he had 4 spinal surgeries. By the time I was a sophomore or junior in high school, he was totally confined to a wheelchair. And obviously, that takes a huge toll on your mental health as well. Yeah. So he, had a lot of trauma from his own childhood. He became an alcoholic. And that was kind of a way to self-medicate in addition to the actual like serious painkillers and medications he was on too. But for me, like my mom is an angel and did such a great job trying to shield us from that. So I had no understanding. I knew that he was sick, but I didn't know anything about the mental stuff that was going on. So sometimes I would come home and everything would be great and happy. And sometimes I would come home and for seemingly no reason, he would be in a terrible mood, be yelling. I would have a plan to like be going to a friend's house and for no reason I'd be like, "You're not going." And I was like, "What do you mean?" Like, "Yeah, I am." Like, I'm going to Shay's house. And for absolutely no reason. I now know like he was in pain, he was drunk, he was on medication, but he would just be a totally different version of himself. And for a child or an adolescent, that level of inconsistency and unpredictability obviously has a really negative impact
Yeah.
and definitely developed into my own hypervigilance, especially in relationships, anxious attachment, etc., and all of the things that ultimately led me to start going to therapy
Yeah.
and healing from these things. But yeah, I think it's very full circle to now get to help people
I was
navigate those same issues from the other side.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you think that a lot of that has impacted your career choice and your trajectory and why you are now, I would say, probably like searching yourself for some of the answers that maybe you didn't get when you were younger through how you're learning and growing and evolving now?
100%. I think I always say like it's funny, especially being single and dating in New York. Like dating as a therapist is very interesting because you get one of two responses, right? Even I finally like changed my dating apps. They don't say I'm a therapist. I just say healthcare because I would get so many comments like, "Oh, perfect, you can fix me," or
Oh my
"I need a
gosh,
therapist,"
no.
right? So
Yes,
either
every man needs a therapist and no
they
one
do,
wants one,
and thankfully a
so
lot of them are coming to me, right? But
yeah.
not the ones I date, but they do, and it's either like, "Oh, great, you can fix me," which immediately, obviously, I'm not talking to you, or the more attuned ones that actually genuinely want to learn about you, still people will ask like, "Oh, what made you get into that?" And obviously that's a very personal answer that I'm not going to probably give someone on an early date. But yeah, no one becomes a therapist by accident. I think my desire to pursue this initially probably came more from a desire to heal myself. But interestingly, I always say anyone that asks me about going to school to become a therapist, that 2-year program, and there's a bunch of different ones you can do. I have a master's in social work. You can do master's in counseling, master's in marriage and family therapy. But that 2 years is basically the most intense therapy on yourself, right? Like all of our assignments were analyze your family, analyze yourself.
Gosh.
And it's great because then by the time you're done with that program, you have the awareness and hopefully have, been in your own therapy and
Yeah.
healed enough that now you can actually hold space and focus on other people's problems without trying to heal yourself.
I was gonna say, how do you even balance the emotions of others and your own? Like, how do you even separate the two? Because I know, like, it would be very hard for me. This is why I'm not a therapist. It would be very hard for me to be able to say, okay, I'm turning off now from that and I'm going like back to my quote unquote real life, right? Like,
Yeah.
and especially also in dating, right? How do you say, oh, I'm dating this person. I'm not his therapist, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's really hard, right? And that's something I still talk about with my therapist to this day. Is she's a mentor now as well. Like, how do you turn off that part of your brain that's
Yeah.
just constantly psychoanalyzing? And that's something I was really nervous about when I was in grad school and, knowing I was going to start this career. Like, how am I going to do that? But I found it comes kind of naturally. One, because it's just exhausting. Like you, especially like now having a full caseload and matchmaking as well. I literally
Yeah.
don't have the time or bandwidth to worry about other people's problems. If anything,
Good.
I think it's actually made me less codependent and hypervigilant in my own relationships because there's just so much real estate of my brain
For
that's
your
already
clients.
being taken up.
Yeah.
Like I truly cannot possibly like
Take on
care
another
that.
client.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
exactly. But yeah, I think it's hard when you date someone who, and I've been a, victim of this in the past of falling into the trap of potential. And you see that
We've
someone,
all been there.
right? Of course, but like,
Who they could be instead of who they are.
yes. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, like I could help you get there. Right. And with my clients, I do, and it's great. But yeah, with people I date, I'm like, not my job, not my job. But that was definitely a lesson learned the hard way.
Okay, so you parents were married. How how did it end?
Yes, very complicated. After 23 years, I always kind of figured I'm the youngest.
Yeah.
And when my brother left for college, I was nervous about it being just the three of us. My mom was back working full time. So there
Yeah.
was a lot of time that it was just me and my dad in the house. And he was working too, but closer to home. He wasn't commuting to the city anymore once he was in a wheelchair. And, there was a lot of tension between the two of us. And I was very nervous when I left. What's going to happen to my mom and dad? Is she going to be okay with him without me?
Yeah.
And it's going to go one of two ways, right? Either they're going to like really reconnect and work through things, or it's going to implode. And for the first couple of months, it seemed to be getting better. Then it imploded. I have memories from the time I was 8 years old being like, why don't you just divorce him? And I now know, I didn't know at the time, the first time she contacted a divorce attorney, I think I was 2 and my brother was 4, right? So she thought about it, but she knew that it would dramatically change our financial situation, and she didn't want to separate us from our friends and our school system and our house. And she really believed, like I made a vow for sickness or health, better or worse. Like I made my bed and now I have to lie in it. She never would have left. So I really think it was a blessing and he sent her free. And it was a 4-year divorce back and forth through lawyers. Obviously incredibly expensive because every time you're sending something back and forth through lawyers, it's $20,000.
Yeah.
And yeah, the craziest part is the divorce was finalized. That started my freshman year of college. Divorce was finalized my senior year of college. And 3 months after I graduated, he passed away. So my mom went through all of that.
Just for that.
And like, yeah, it would have just been. But one of the reasons too, my mom never left is she was like, I don't think he can survive on his own.
Yeah.
I have to take care of him. And
Yeah.
I mean, I guess she was right. He only made it a couple years. I'm very grateful though that he passed in summer 2019. So he didn't have to live through COVID.
Yeah.
That would have been a disaster for him physically. Like if he got sick, he was obviously very immunocompromised. And just the isolation, I think, would have been really hard.
Yeah.
So and yeah, the
Wow.
timing was kind of crazy, but I think it all happened in the right way.
And your mom, honestly, for going through all that, right?
Yeah, and they didn't have a prenup. I wish they did.
Yeah.
And that's definitely something that my brother and I took away from that experience is we would never consider.
Did your mom end up having to financially help him in the end, or?
No, thankfully not. He did try to argue during the divorce, like she should be paying me alimony because she was out earning him at the time.
Of course, because she was doing everything.
Yeah, but no, it was okay.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
For 4 years.
Yeah, 4 years. And it's much more about obviously the emotional toll and
Totally.
and it's starting her
Trapped.
whole life over
Trapped.
50, right?
And she was trapped for
Yeah.
so many years.
And she really
Your
thought
dad was also trapped too, right? Flip side, right?
Yeah.
Like,
well, he was a victim of his own mind, right? He was imprisoned by himself.
mm-hmm.
And yeah, she was imprisoned by her circumstances.
Yeah.
Which in retrospect, like she did have the power to change. But
it's so hard in that situation.
Of course it's so hard. And it's hard to argue too. Like I always wonder, like she was doing the best she could with what she had and trying to make the best decisions for my brother and I. But a conversation I've now had with her is like, would it actually have been better for us to, give up some of the financial stability had you gotten divorced sooner, but had more emotional stability and like had a safer environment. Yeah. And
also it wasn't
like that's the greatest
for you.
Exactly. Like that's the greatest, obviously now I wouldn't change anything because it's influenced the person I am in my career today.
Totally.
But yeah, like that's the greatest form of generational wealth is a secure attachment style and emotional safety. If you can give your kids that, they'll figure the rest out.
Yeah. And there is something to be said about, I do think oftentimes people get trapped in marriages.
Yeah.
Because they financially, they don't know how to get out. What is it? Like 70% of people that are still married are unhappy.
Yeah. At least.
And I don't know what the answer is, right? Like I go back and forth on this all the time with friends is like, is it better to stay married for kids and put on a facade and keep the family nucleus like, intact and make it seem like everything's okay versus blowing it all up? But at the same time, like, isn't it wonderful when you have two parents that love you and maybe they have separate lives, but they're at least happy?
100%. And that's what I say to clients, right? I have a client right now who's in that situation. He has 2 kids under the age of 5, early 40s. And he's like, I can't do this for another 20 years. And I'm like, okay, if you're going to leave eventually, leave now. Because kids, you can't lie to kids, right? You can't, energy doesn't lie. Kids are such good readers of energy. They're so perceptive. They're sponges, but they also, like, even if you try to pretend everything's okay, they don't feel okay. Their nervous system knows that something is wrong versus, it might be the adjustment is hard. I think how you handle it and how you talk to kids about it is really hard, but better oftentimes in the long run.
And also how you treat your partner during the process.
100%. And not putting kids in the middle. I have grown adult clients now who were, only children and their parents would constantly say horrible things about the other one to each other. And like, you have to have boundaries with children, right? You
Yeah.
can't treat your kid like your friend.
Yeah. Or a partner.
Or a partner, exactly. And that's a dynamic that happens a lot too if you're struggling with your partner and then you end up emotionally relying on your kid.
I bet you see a lot of that also in the city, especially.
100%. I think this only gets compounded with wealth and, the city and the pressure to keep up with appearances. But on the flip side of that, obviously, even having the option to get divorced is a privilege. A lot of people
Totally.
get trapped because they can't afford to get divorced.
Totally. It's so hard. I was talking to someone recently in the city, and they were like, one of the reasons we're not getting divorced is because a 2-3 bedroom apartment in New York right now to rent is like $25,000 to $30,000. How are you going to do it for two people?
On your own, yeah.
$60,000. And then if only one person's working, that person then has to pay for 2 rents. Like, it's wild out there.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah. Or maybe it means, like in your parents' situation, like maybe you have to leave the city, right?
Yeah.
And I think that was my mom's big consideration. Like, am I going to have to give up this lifestyle?
Yeah.
And I see both sides, right? Like, that obviously gave us a lot of opportunities. Like, would we have gone to the schools that we did and had the opportunities that we did if we were in a different school system? I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard. I don't think there's ever like a one right answer. I think it's multiple little things that then compound to like whatever your end result is. But I think having the freedom to decide is one of the most important things. And that's where I know you and I have talked about this. We just spoke on a panel actually a few days ago. Thank you, India. Where having the ability to make decisions is, I think, one of the greatest gifts that you can have, right? And are probably one of the biggest privileges. But flip side of that is I do think there's also this balance of like, we have access to so much, and there's always going to be someone hotter. There's always going to be someone wealthier. There's always going to be someone more interesting. But it's like, how do you continuously show up and choose your partner if it's a quote unquote healthy dynamic? But when it becomes a non-healthy dynamic, you should also have the option to not choose your partner.
And the courage to do that,
Yeah.
right? That's, I think, where a lot of it is. But yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of that comes down to character too, right? Are you someone who takes emotional risks? Are you someone who lives with integrity? Do your words and actions align? If you say, I'm choosing this person and I'm committing to this person, are you not just doing that in theory and getting married, but your actions actually show that every single day? And that's where, I think a lot of people get stuck. And it's also where fear of commitment stems from, right? I have young guys in my office, late 20s, early 30s, who are like, this girl is everything I'm looking for. She's perfect on paper. But, what if in 10 years or 20 years, there's someone else that I feel more strongly for? I'm like, there probably will be.
There's going to be.
There's
but you
going
still
to be.
choose that person.
Right. Because it's not just about, oh, I have this feeling. So many people are chasing a feeling. And, that's great. The feeling is intoxicating. It's like, what's that Chelsea Cutler lyric? It's like, validation might as well be its own drug, right? And like that feeling that you're getting when you're in those new stages with someone is really validation.
Totally.
And this exciting high. But that's always going to go away. So who is the person that at the end of the day you always laugh with? You can be yourself with. Everything is fun with them. You could be, stuck at an airport with a delayed flight for 8 hours and you're still content and happy in each other's presence.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, there's going to be someone hotter that you're like, wow, I wish I could them instead of just my wife.
Totally.
But are you going to trade all of that
for
that
short instant gratification?
Yeah.
There's also like, I say this because a lot of people are like, oh, prenups are a setting up for divorce. I'm like, no, they're not. They're actually the foundation for like a stronger, longer lasting marriage, because you're getting on the same page and you're having these hard conversations. And I do think a lot of people, when they're married and they start having the hard conversations, like, why didn't you have these before you got married? And then also, like, just because you have a hard conversation does not mean you should get divorced. Like, marriage is hard.
Yeah. And not even just marriage. I think in the early stages, even with dating, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm always encouraging people to have these hard conversations early.
Yeah.
And it's also a great weed out, right? They're like, well, what if it scares this person away?
Then
great.
Then bye.
Then don't date them.
Yeah.
Right? You can't be with someone who's not willing to have willing to have hard conversations, right? Like, you can be uncomfortable with them. That's fine. But are you willing to sit in the discomfort and do it anyway?
Yeah.
Right? They're hard. They're hard for a reason. But you have to learn and you have to start somewhere. A lot of people also think like, well, if we have conflict, then, something's wrong. No, conflict is actually what creates intimacy, right? Ideally, when you have these hard conversations and you're able to be vulnerable and hear each other and meet each other with curiosity and compassion, you end up feeling closer afterwards. Like that's really what intimacy is. It's when you work through conflict resolution. That's what they say too, right? Like on the prenup topic, marry someone you could see yourself being amicably divorced from.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and I think that's why you also see sometimes people who end up with an ex-partner or, they separate for a few years and get back together. That's because they were able to maintain compassion and respect towards each other in that separation. I actually think that's a great kind of test is, can we still be nice to each other and respect each other in the worst case scenario?
Yeah. You were saying that you just went to that Gabby Bernstein series. Talk about that. Tell me like what were your main takeaways from that in terms of relationships?
Yeah, I've seen her speak so many times. I love Gabby. So when I was studying abroad in college, I had my friend Sloan, shout out. She is very into spirituality and wellness and was reading The Universe Has Your Back at the time. So I read that and started going down this whole spiritual path. And something I've always thought about is Gabby basically translates A Course in Miracles, which is like the OG spiritual, like Bible, metaphysical text. It's very dense. It's, a little metaphorical and hard to understand.
Okay.
She translates it into easily digestible, modern, punchy, whatever. She has 10 books now. And the most recent one is called Self-Help, and it's all about IFS therapy, which
What is IFS?
IFS is internal family systems. And it's a form of therapy that's basically about the premise is that we all have these different parts of ourselves, right?
Okay.
So it's really relevant, especially in relationships and couples therapy when you have an anxious avoidant dynamic, which literally everyone I work with does. And, it's about understanding like, okay, this part of me that, take for example, the fear of commitment, right? This one part of me, the loving, compassionate part of me that feels safe, loves being around you, has so much fun with you, can see a future with you. But the avoidant part of me feels smothered and overwhelmed by closeness and is scared of losing my own identity and needs to feel in control. So when you identify all these different parts of yourself, then you can kind of regroup and be mindful about in any given interaction or conflict, which part is in the driver's seat?
Yeah.
And more importantly, what does it need right now? Right? Okay, my avoidant part, it's feeling really trapped. It wants to run away and get relief. But I know that's going to create conflict and disconnection with my partner because usually in an anxious avoidant dynamic, the anxious partner wants closeness and the avoidant partner wants independence. So it creates this push pull, right? Like pursuer chaser almost. And the anxious person doesn't know how to self-soothe. They co-regulate, which means their nervous system regulates by being with someone else. And the avoidant person is the opposite. So they self-regulate. And when they feel overwhelmed, they need to be alone. And for both people, it's learning. The anxious person needs to learn how to self-soothe and develop more independence and not rely on their partner to feel safe. And the avoidant person needs to learn how to stay in that discomfort and stay connected. So this is what I work with a lot of my men on, right? How to stay in that moment and stay connected even when they're feeling overwhelmed. IFS is really helpful with this because when you have that language, you can sit with your partner and say, okay, my avoidant part is feeling really overwhelmed. It wants to run away and flee this conversation because I'm really uncomfortable. But instead of doing that, I'm choosing to sit in the discomfort and stay present with you. So anyway, Gabby talks a lot about that, and her own relationship journey was very interesting. She was an addict to drugs and love, codependent. So she got fully sober at 25. When she was, I believe, 27, she met her now husband and they dated for 3 years, but it was still a pretty codependent dynamic. She always says, he wasn't a bad guy. He just wasn't that available. And she was being the cool girl, right? I could talk for hours about the myth of the cool girl. It doesn't exist, right? I never published it, but in college/grad school, I wrote a book called Confessions of a Cool Girl. And about like
this title.
All of the mistakes I made, like dating and like trying to pretend I was like chill and cool. And I am the least chill, cool person ever, right? Like and not anymore, but at the time at least, I was an anxious girly, right? Like nothing about it was chill. But I'd be like, yeah, of course, fine. Like, I don't care, whatever. So Gabby talks about that. She was like, I acted like I didn't care that, my boyfriend never really called except for the weekends and whatever. And Course in Miracles talks about how relationships are assignments, right? They're spiritual assignments for us to learn and grow. So in this relationship, she was like, my assignment is to stop relying on this person for validation and like making an idol out of a romantic partner. Like, if I have this person to love me and choose me, then I'm worthy, then I'm good enough, then everything's going to be okay, then I'm going to be happy. And learning to really be alone. And she says, Spirit Became My Boyfriend is a chapter of her book, Spirit Junkie, where she talks about her whole relationship. And she spent hours just meditating and journaling and going really deeply into her spiritual journey, which honestly I've done in probably the last 6 to 12 months. A similar thing of just, I used to be the girl that was going on 4 or 5 dates a week, right? When I was in grad school, I literally think I went on dinner dates every single night to eat dinner because I was a broke grad student. Like, it was great. I probably have been on first dates with 200 guys in New York in the last 5 years.
Oh my gosh.
Which, who
That's
knew
amazing.
at the time it was research for my future job,
amazing.
right? It was research.
It's amazing. Look at that. That's incredible.
So many
Lots
stories,
of research.
lots of research. And I learned so much about myself. And I tell clients now who are like, oh, I'm figuring out what I want. I don't know. I'm like, just go on a million dates.
Yeah.
Right? Get to know people, figure out what you like, figure out what you don't like. But with that too, I think you get to a point of, okay, I know it's out there. Now I need to just reconnect with myself.
Yeah.
I know what I want. I'm not looking for it anymore, right? And Gabby says this too, like when you go really inward and strengthen that relationship with yourself and with, a higher power, however you like to define a higher power. For me, it's like the universe and spirituality, not really a prescribed religion. But yeah, when you strengthen that relationship, you become so magnetic.
Yeah.
Because you are no longer emitting an energy of need or desperation. You don't need anything from anyone. So it's funny now in this place, like I have totally stopped focusing on dating. I've never gotten more male attention in my life. Like coming out of the woodworks, and these people are like really available and really amazing and really, want to be with me and commit to me. And I'm for the first time in my life being like, I don't know, like let me evaluate you.
Totally.
Which it's just such a different dynamic. And so that work is, something I work on a lot with my more so girlies, some guys too.
Yeah.
But I joke that I have my finance bro clients and then my mini-me's who are like younger Maddies making all the same mistakes I did. And them, I'm like, girl, just like strengthen the relationship with yourself.
Yeah.
Get into spirituality if it resonates with you. It's not for everyone. And watch what happens. It's really crazy.
I love this.
So anyway, Gabby ended up reconnecting. She said the same thing. She's like, when I had this Spirit Became My Boyfriend era, she was attracting so many guys and they were all great, but ultimately she was guided to revisit the relationship with her now husband, ex-boyfriend at the time. They became really good friends. And when they were friends, she was finally being her authentic self.
Yeah.
That's another thing she always says that I love and repeat to clients all the time is there's nothing sexier than your authentic truth. What people can connect to is your authenticity.
Yeah.
And that's where the myth of the cool girl, right? Like we try to pretend and impress people, but no one can connect to that because it's not real. My therapist said something to me once about this that I thought was so interesting. 2 things. One was, she was like, imagine a beautiful home that's in Architectural Digest, right? What does it look like? And what does it feel like? It looks amazing, perfect, pristine. But do you feel like you can curl up on the couch there? Do you feel like you can nest and make a home there? Or do you just want to look at it, but not really get too close and comfortable?
Yeah.
Versus she's like, my house, right? Like, yeah, maybe the dog peed on the carpet and, the pillows aren't fluffed. But the feeling is, I can stay here. I can build a home here.
Yeah.
And that's what we do when we try to present this perfect version of ourselves in dating. No one can build a home there. You're being the Architectural Digest version of yourself. So that totally changed my whole perspective and how I approach dating. Now I'm like, here it is. Like, take it or leave it.
I'm just laughing because I'm like, I just want a Nancy Meyers kitchen relationship then. If that's the case.
Me too, girl. Me too.
That's what I would like my relationship to be, is Nancy Meyers kitchen.
Yes. May we all find that, right?
So
and that's,
funny.
you want to feel like you can be yourself and, everything is fun with them. And, you're not. Also, the other piece of it is if you try to be the cool girl and it works,
Then
first
you're
of all,
stuck being a false reality for the rest.
or it's a bait and switch, right? Eventually your true self comes out and then it's like you've sold someone a lie. It's kind of manipulative, honestly.
Totally.
Yeah.
So right now, like okay, so I know the matchmaking part is like a new chapter in the larger journey. Tell me what you're seeing similar, like what are the similarities that you see when you assess a client for matchmaking that you do with therapy, and then what are the differences?
Yeah, great question. I think a lot of similarities. What's really difficult is that in therapy, I can address the quote unquote issues or challenges and work on them versus with matchmaking, that's not my job and I can't. So, there'll be clients that are like, yeah, like this girl's great and I like her, but I don't know. Or the same like themes of avoidance, fear of commitment will come up, but that's not my job. My job is just to find the person that they want. So it's a lot more difficult, I think, in that sense to identify what someone's looking for without being able to influence their self-awareness.
Are there ever matchmaking groups that straight up are like, this guy needs therapy, let's get him a therapist and like, let's help him? Or is it just, and women, right? This woman needs a therapist, like she's been to Lulu. Like, how do we?
Yeah. So oftentimes not straight up full on therapy, but coaching is definitely part of it. But it's more practical. We're not diving into someone's emotions and their past, their childhood trauma. That's not our place, right? If they want to do that on their own, great. But coaching in terms of, how are you showing up on a date? Are you presenting yourself as well as you can? And, making sure, especially about follow through, right? Like we say when we connect to clients, we ask them to reach out within 24 hours, obviously like, ghosting, all those things. So coaching, I think in terms of etiquette, but yeah, we're not getting into the deep emotional weeds, which is a little bit challenging for me sometimes because it's my natural inclination to go there. But it's also kind of freeing sometimes that I'm like, oh, I don't have to worry about this. This is not my job.
But are you ever just like, wait, I wish that this was part of it? Because it's like, you probably see people and clients that you're like, wait, you're so close to getting what you want, but like, here's the 2 steps that you need to go deeper on. And if you're not going to go deeper on these, you're going to keep coming back for dates instead of finding your person. Like,
totally. But again, like, that's not my job, right? Like,
so crazy.
Some people, I see that, all the time in the real world too, friends or people I go out with. Again, it's that potential. Like, you're so close, but if you don't want to do that work, you're not going to do that work. I can't make you do it. If you on your own decide, which is different with my therapy clients too, like I would never work with an involuntary client. If you're like mandated therapy, no thanks, because it's not going to work.
Yeah.
It's only going to work if you want to do the work. And even then there are people that come to therapy and they, sit there and talk about it. But 45 minutes a week isn't making a difference. If you're not reflecting and doing stuff on your own and really wanting to change, people only change when they've had enough.
Yep.
Right? Like the fear and the pain of change outweighs their current frustration.
So because you're seeing clients coming through for therapy and for dating, like what are you seeing as the landscape right now, right? 2026, spring of 2026, like what is going on out in the world? Like, are people happy? Are people exhausted? Are people excited to date again? Because it's so funny. I keep seeing all these articles like dating's horrible, dating's dead, but like I've had so much fun dating.
Yeah, I think it's a mix, right? I'm seeing this anti-app culture for sure.
Yeah.
People are burnt out and tired and fatigued on the apps. They don't want to swipe anymore. But the desire for connection and partnership hasn't gone away.
Totally.
Right? People want to date, but they want to meet people through friends. They want to be set up. They want to do a matchmaker, right? They want something that feels more personal and high touch rather than just this endless swiping that's not getting them anywhere. But yeah, definitely. I mean, like people are always going to want love. It's it's our hardwired desire, right? Yeah, so I'm seeing that for sure. I also think I'm seeing, which is great, slowly a trend towards a lot more intentionality in dating, right? And that goes hand in hand with the dating app fatigue, right? A lot of people are like, I don't want to go on a date just to go on a date. I only want to go on a date if we're actually aligned and there's real potential here.
Yep.
And that's another reason people are using matchmakers. We're sorting through, we do all of the vetting for you. So by the time you go on a date, it's kind of like a third or fourth date. Like we've already gotten the politics, religion, future lifestyle, alignment questions out of the way from the interviews that we do on the front end. Then you just get to go see like, okay, do we have chemistry?
Yeah.
Is there a vibe?
I love that.
Yeah.
What are some of the intake questions that you ask clients for matchmaking?
Intake questions, I mean, so we have people fill out a profile that is a lot more depth than what you would see. That's the other thing, right? On a dating app, you're getting 6 photos, maybe prompts, depending on the app you're on.
Yep.
But it's kind of a game of hot or not.
Yep.
And with matchmaking, it's a lot more in depth. So we like to get a full picture. We do interviews and we like to get a full picture of who someone is, what they're looking for, what their background is in upbringing, what their career trajectory and journey has looked like, past relationships. We do have a lot of people that were previously married 1, 2, maybe 3 times or not at all. Do they have kids? Are their kids launched? What's their day-to-day schedule look like with their career? Are they working from home? What's their lifestyle? And, what do they want to spend time doing with a partner in an ideal world? Like one question I love to ask is like, if I could give you a crystal ball and, you could build a bear, basically your dream partner, which we can't, unfortunately, we can't. But, in the dream world, who is this person? Describe this man or woman. Describe what you're looking for to me. And I think that helps the visualization as well to get a really clear image.
Do you ever also have like people that come in and are like, this is what I want, blah, 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 blah. Like, here's all the things that I need. And then you realize like, actually, no, that's not the right partner for you. Because so often I do think like, I think about my 2 or 3 serious relationships. They were never a guy that I was gonna, like, I never would have swiped on them in my head, right? Or I never would have.
Yeah, it's not what you expected.
No, they're not who I would have in my head envisioned.
Totally.
But they were wonderful partners.
Totally, yeah. And I think that's, again, a beauty of using a matchmaker or meeting organically, because on an app, you're probably only swiping on people that fit that vision in your head.
Yeah.
Versus with a matchmaker, we can get to know someone and be like, okay, like maybe they're a tiny bit outside of your height criteria or age criteria or whatever your perfect want list is, not your need list, right? But your want list. But we see these really strong connection points and think you should give it a shot. And it ends up being like, oh my God, yeah, this was the most amazing match. So definitely, I think we see that, but it's something people have to realize on their own, right? And sometimes I think it takes being with the person, even like the Materialist movie that, portrayed matchmaking. That's a perfect example. Dakota Johnson gets the on paper, everything she thinks she wants, perfect, hot, quote unquote, high value guy, and then doesn't like the way it feels.
Yeah.
Something I talk about with therapy and matchmaking clients is this idea of caring less about how things look and more about how they feel.
In your gut.
Right. And like, sure, you could have the person on paper who, satisfies your ego, but if you don't feel connected and happy and joyful with that person, what's the point?
Yeah. Joyful.
Yeah.
That's such a good.
Playful and joyful. Yes.
I need to go back to those words more. Playful and joyful.
Yes.
That's so true.
Yeah. I think like your person should bring out that playful inner child. When your inner child feels safe enough to be that happy little kid and just play. Yeah. Isn't that what we all want at the end of the day?
So I know a lot of your clients are second marriages, third marriages, etc. What is the conversation around prenups that you're seeing in this sphere of this like level of, community, I would say, right? Like, are people open to them? Are people still scared of them? Like, what are you seeing?
Yeah. So it's interesting with matchmaking clients, because we're obviously on the front end of making the relationship.
Yeah.
I'm not privy to those conversations. I imagine a lot of these people, because they have built success for themselves, are smart enough, I hope, to protect what they've built and have those conversations. But definitely with my therapy clients, comes up all the time. Every single one of my therapy clients that has been engaged or married or divorced in the last, 3 years I've been doing this, has brought up their prenup in my office. And they've all been very pro. Like, either they're the one bringing it up to their partner or their partner brings it up. And some of them, I have one client who got married very young, doesn't have a prenup, and I've been encouraging him to get a postnup, right? Because he, paid off debt for his wife, and there's significant financial circumstances there. Circumstances there that, I'm like, again, I think the narrative has really changed around prenups, and it's not about, oh, the man controlling the woman. I always think of the scene in Sex and the City where Charlotte goes up to Trey's mom and is like, I'm worth $1 million, right?
Yeah,
but it's not about that anymore. It's just a plan. And I think learning too that if you don't have a prenup, I learned this from you, You do, and it's just decided by the government, right? And same thing with wills. I think like during COVID, my mom had my brother and I make wills because we both have asthma, and she's like, God forbid something happens. But also, if you're over the age of 18, you should have a will, because if you're not married and you don't have children and you die, everything you own goes to the state.
It's the whole thing's wild.
Yeah. And even if it's not much, like, wouldn't you rather it go to someone you love or that you choose versus the government?
I just was at a co-working day yesterday, and this one woman who's like a very successful, wonderful person, has a child, is not married, doesn't have a will. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? What do you mean?
Your child needs to be the beneficiary. I mean, whoever you want, but I imagine it'd be the child.
And she was like, can you send me some estate attorneys? I was like, yes. I was like, I'm going to send you some great trust and estate attorneys, but what I want you to do right now is go home, get a Band-Aid, which is trustandwill.com. Just put something on paper, even if it's not like the final will.
Write it on a paper towel in your kitchen. Just write it down and sign it.
Like, oh my goodness. Both of it though, right? It's like people need to have these conversations yet again. No one wants to think about death or divorce.
Yeah.
It's like the 2 Ds. No one wants to think about them, talk about them, do the things you need to do, but you need to.
Yeah. You need to. It's like anything else in life. Why wouldn't you have a plan?
Yeah.
Right? And a lot of these people, it's interesting, are very strategic, type A, hardworking. They have a plan for everything
else.
But this is like in that box of do not open. I don't want to think about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always say, I was laughing the other day with a friend. I was like, we should have a day. You know how there's tax day. Oh, the worst day. But
next week is actually my brother's birthday.
Oh my goodness. God bless your brother.
I was like, happy birthday, Jordan. Reminder to pay my taxes.
But I'm like, we should have like I hate to say it, but like a death and divorce day, right? Which is like the day, like June 1st, everyone goes and makes sure that their, wills are updated.
Yeah, seriously.
Their trusts are dotted and I'd, and that their prenups or postnups are still applicable to their current situation.
Yeah, or like teach these things in school, right? Like I went to public school in New Jersey, right? It was the #1 public school in the state. It was a good education, but our health class, freshman year of health class, was our basketball coach was the teacher, and he would just put a TV, like old school, I'm dating myself, roll out like a big TV and just put on Degrassi for us to watch every day. It was like, here, like learn about sex, drugs, whatever. I'm like, what if instead we had classes on what a healthy and unhealthy relationship looks like? What emotional abuse looks like, why you should have a will, why you should have a prenup. What if you had to, but when you turn 18, usually your senior year of high school, what if you couldn't graduate from a public school without having a will?
Not know. I think that's great. Yeah, totally.
Like, just like having a plan.
Yeah.
Basic financial,
also make it more
legal
normal.
planning.
Make it like a more normal conversation. So when you do amass a certain level of wealth and or have children or whatever, it's not as scary.
Yeah.
Because you've already been like, oh, this is just something
I've been planning for this.
Part of the plan.
Yeah. I already know what this looks like.
I'm laughing. I'm like, should we just like launch a day? Let's just go for it. Get all of our friends. Be like, we're going to have a divorce and death party.
National death. Maybe there has to be 2 separate days.
Well,
National Divorce Day.
We did this.
I know, me too. Thanks for having me on.
Like a continuation of our panel, which was awesome.
So fun.
But this was wonderful. And I know this is just the first of many more conversations that we're going to have about all of these different things. So thank you for coming over.
Of course. Thanks for having me.